I've already said that at this meeting we have world-class speakers. And the first of our world-class speakers this morning is Dr. Will Miller. Dr. Miller combines an expertise in managing interpersonal relationships and workplace culture with, wait for it, a career as a professional stand-up comedian. We're about to receive a perspective on improving the quality of our daily lives. The message is serious. I suspect the presentation will be anything but. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Will Miller.
Thank you. Keep it going for Tony. He sounds fabulous. I'm always envious of the British accent. It always sounds so much more profound and powerful than my own Brooklynese. Good morning. How are you? Congratulations on your success and for being here. I've had a pretty interesting background. I was a stand-up comedian, worked with many people who went on to become stars, and here I am with you. I'm also a psychologist and a police chaplain. I've had a pretty diverse career. Over the years of my career, I have become passionate about quality of life. Not about what you do specifically. I don't have information that's relevant to your business pertinently. But in terms of you and me as creatures walking around, the quality of our life and enjoying what you do and enjoying the quality of your life. You know this, those of you from the United States, Americans lead the world in stress-related disorders. You do know that, correct? Right? 1 out of 4 of us have a diagnosable stress-related disorder. 1 out of 4. So look around. You know, if the 3 people sitting next to you look okay, you know, it's you. The great neuropsychologist Robert Sapolsky wrote a great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And he's one of the foremost researchers on stress. And he was the one who 30 years ago pointed out what is now an accepted thesis in psychology and well-being, that the human organism has great equipment to handle acute stress. Working with the police department, for example, or anyone who is in a circumstance where there is an acute adrenaline rush of stress, and maybe you've had that. Maybe you've had a traumatic experience. Maybe you've had a car wreck or something that your systems ramp up and elevate to the max. The human body has phenomenal equipment to recover from that with very little lingering effect. So zebras who are walking around at peace and don't have chronic stress, and all of a sudden there's a cheetah, and they have to run, that's acute stress. And then when they realize, oh, they got Bob, not me, they calm right down. The human organism does not have good equipment to handle chronic stress. The kind of chronic stress that is corrosive, elevates that cortisol in your blood, the kind of low-grade stress that becomes a problem for all of us. The issue, of course, is the matter of control. Great psychologist Julian Rotter from Indiana University pointed out that people are divided into 2 kinds of styles. One is a person who has an external locus of control, which means that you really are an individual who feels organically at the mercy of circumstances outside your control. You are mostly reactive to that. In contrast, there are those who are people with an internal locus of control, this sense that if I do the right thing and if I try really hard, I in fact can master. That's you. People of success, people of capacity, are people who have a strong internal locus of control. And an internal locus of control is terrific. It's a big reason why you got to this meeting. The flip side of that internal locus of control is when, in fact, we don't have control. Now, I'm not speaking from any lofty position here. I have an internal locus of control. I really believe that what I do can make a difference in my world and the world around me. I'm reminded, however, that control is a specious expectation in certain life situations. Now, for me, I mostly have felt it when I fly. Now, I was a comedian for 17 years, and I've been a speaker for another 15. So for 30 years, I've been flying an enormous amount of miles, about 150,000 miles a year. And it's pretty ugly travel. It's not international. It's mostly Kansas City to Los Angeles to New York. And after 30 years of flying, I'm still a nervous flyer. I'm not a coward. I'll get up on the plane, but I don't like it. Applaud if, like me, even if you do fly, applaud if you're an uncomfortable flyer. Applaud if you don't like to fly. Okay, now applaud if you're one of those lucky souls who has no fear at all of flying. Applaud if you're like that. Okay. All right, a couple of you applauded twice. That's a whole other mental health issue. We won't get into that now. Actually, the second group, the people who have no fear, I got to tell you, as a therapist, you're in complete denial. Most of you are probably like me. If it's a clear day, you know, today I'm flying, I'm fine, I'm Sky King, I'll get up there. I can get nervous pretty easily, though. Have you ever been on a flight and you hear a noise or you feel a sensation that you don't recognize as part of the routine of the flight? I don't want to just begin screaming like a child, but you get alert, right? It's like, you look up to see if anyone else is panicking, right? If the frequent flyer next to you has not dropped their Wall Street Journal, it's probably okay. I look for the flight attendants. Do you do that? Because they know what all the routines are. Of course, the last thing you want to see when you look up is the flight attendant making that same face back at you, right? They go running to the telephone. You're probably going down. And that's my fear. My fear is not noise or movement. It's crashing, really. That's it, because that's the elemental problem that they've never really solved, have they? You know? They have prevention. They have seat belts of fairly dubious value in a 400-mile-an-hour nosedive into the hillside. Wow, that was some impact, huh? Well, thank God for the old belt. Did you see that guy across the aisle? He didn't have a seat belt on. He went through the windshield. That's what actually kills you. They have the oxygen mask. I got to tell you, folks, if there's a crisis on board the plane, I don't want to become even more alert. Wouldn't some kind of a drug or anesthesia be more merciful there? Folks, it's Captain Bob. It's going to get a little dicey up here. Just take a big suck into that mask. We're going to knock you out for about 20 minutes. We'll be up here praying to God we all wake up. I've been in all sorts of frightening airline events. I won't fly, and I don't like commuter flights. Man, there's just too much reality in that. You ever taken a flight, you have to change planes, and they don't tell you that you're switching from jet service to the commuter subdivision of that plane? So suddenly you're on like American Eagle or something like that. Cute little plane, you can roll the window down. You can actually see the pilots fly in the plane. You see the back of the head of the pilot and the co-pilot. I don't want to watch these guys. If something went wrong, you're in on it as soon as they are. You're in a near miss? Whoa! My God, did you guys see that? Yeah, you look out the window. There are the people in the other plane. I've been in near misses. I was flying to Raleigh, North Carolina when I was a comedian with another comic, and we're coming into land. Now, the landing gear of the plane came down, but a little light did not come on in the cockpit, so they didn't know if the wheels were all the way down, and evidently there's no little door they can look out, so it seemed to me they could have done something with a mirror on a stick out the window. That would have worked, huh? Oh, they're fine. So the pilot comes on, and he says, he must have been new, he actually said, quote, "We're pretty sure the wheels are okay, but we're going to have to fly low over the airport and have the tower look at the landing gear. This is the high-tech solution for this crisis. We're going to buzz the airport. We're going to slow down to, 200 miles an hour. Some guy's going to look out the window. Yeah. I'm pretty sure two of those wheels are down pretty good. I've been in aborted landings. Those are generally benign, an air traffic thing, but I was in one in Detroit several years ago. We're coming into land. We were just about to touch down and then took off like a rocket, scared us to death. And we didn't know what happened. We thought, well, maybe they went to the wrong airport. What did we know? Oh, this is Toledo. My bad. So the pilot comes on in that eerily calm pilot's voice, and he goes, well, folks, it seems like a truck went right across the runway in front of us. We're going to have to go around and try that again. Ladies and gentlemen, as a mental health professional, that's exactly how a crazy person reacts in that situation. I had no adrenaline whatsoever. I was more worried about him afterwards. I'm going to go around and see if I can't hit that guy this time. Because, my God, nobody cuts off Captain Bob. Are you with me? See, here's what they ought to do. If you can't survive the crash, at least they should give you the option to try and save yourself. Like if they gave you, say, 300 feet of rope with a hook on it, you could hook the rope onto the door, lower yourself out, hang underneath the plane, and ride it in. Can't be any more terrifying out there than it is inside the plane. But see, here are the physics. See, here's the plane coming in to crash. Help, help, we're crashing. But here you are down here in your rope. Now see, the wind would keep you behind the plane. And before the plane hits the ground and your feet reach the ground, just start running and let go. Some of you smart folks are actually thinking this out, aren't you? Hey, I was performing in a comedy club called Pips in Brooklyn. Everybody you ever heard of performed in Pips. It was classic Brooklyn, where I'm from. And so this guy came up to me after the show and he said, you know that plane thing you was talking about? It seems to me when your feet reach the ground, you would be running forward at like 200 or 300 miles an hour. Before you could stop yourself, I think you would run into the flaming wreckage anyway. It is not going to work, is what I'm telling you. And he had a straight face, and I'm going, my God, he's serious. Okay, well, you could wear roller skates and then veer off. What about that, huh?
What makes you resilient? You know, resilience is the word. You know, resilience as a concept has only been studied by researchers for about 30 years. And they really have come to determine that there really are three variables that make for a resilient person. One is genetics. Well, you know, that train left the station. You are who you are what you are. It's an optimistic perspective, a can-do, that internal locus of control. You've got it because of your success. You know that that's the case. You have the genetic equipment to be resilient. But the two other variables represent a whole that is a profound change in our culture. And the second variable is a close-knit family, you know, your significant other, your kids, your close-knit world. And third is the wider social support system. And this is the area that I study at Purdue University. And we've come to a place now where we have lost the kind of support we need to sustain our resilient attitude. Now, let me give you two facts about American life that have transformed us socioculturally over the past 6 decades. In the U.S., on the average year, recession years a little dip, about 13%. Most years, it's 15 to 17% of the U.S. population relocates every single year. You're talking 35 to 50 million people move every year. Between the ages of 20 and 40, the career and family building years, 1 out of 3 move every single year. I know I'm looking into the faces of people who may coincidentally be living and working where you were born and raised. But if you have children, if it hasn't already happened, you know as well as I do that the likelihood is very low statistically that they will remain living where you live. You may already have family members, siblings, parents, others who've moved all around the country. All right? We know that we're mobile. I come from a family of 8. We lost a brother young. 7 of us grew up after college, following careers and all of that. We live in 7 different states. My parents lived in an 8th until they began a late life trend of stalking. They realized we weren't coming home. After the age of 60, they moved 6 times following around one of my sisters or brothers. Now, that may be more extreme than your situation, but I know you know intellectually we're a highly mobile society and good for us. But what are the consequences of that? Well, hold on to that. Fact number 2, you know this. We are awash in media. The average American is looking at a screen between television, 25 hours a week, that's a low estimate, computer screen time, smartphone time, anywhere from 30 to 60 hours a week, we're looking at a screen. And even if that is not your profile particularly, you know that we are immersed in media. Okay, so we're mobile and we're media entrenched. What I'm telling you is, psychologically, it's the fission, the combination of those two that has transformed us socially and psychologically, to the point where now most people are reliant on too few relationships. And if the resilience research tells us something, it's that we tend to have not enough of what we need to sustain our mood. Pop psychology is a big industry. I know it. There are a lot of speakers in pop psychology. The myopia in popular psychology intimates that, and you probably have heard this in business literature and business success orientation, that if you really try hard, you can transform yourself. Well, yes, you can. But it gives a false sense that that change happens principally from the inside out. I must tell you, authentic research psychology says, not so fast. Change actually happens adaptively. We change primarily by reacting from the outside in. The circumstances within which we find ourselves are the circumstances to which we adapt. So change happens much more through the impetus of external circumstance than internal circumstance. So what does that mean? It means that the quality of your relational life is a major driver on your capacity to hold on to your good, cheery, optimistic mood. Here's how I describe it. Now, you don't know me and I don't know you. Suppose my wife and I, my wife's a school principal, we have 2 kids, grown and gone, and suppose my wife and I came to visit you at your house. And we're sitting at your kitchen table, and it's a very pleasant, hospitable conversation. And imagine if about 5 minutes into this get-to-know-you chat, without asking, I get up, I walk over to your refrigerator, I open it up, and I start looking around in there. Really looking around, like I make a salad. I cut stuff up. You might not say anything out loud, but you'd be thinking, gee, that's a little forward. You'd tell people later, I didn't know this bozo. He goes into the refrigerator, looks around, puts in, last night's leftovers in the microwave. Then he went into the den and took a nap. That's not what visitors do. Let's change the scenario. My wife and I come to visit you at your house. We're sitting at your kitchen table. We've never met before, but it turns out we are related. I'm a relative, a cousin, an uncle. I'm from a wing of the family that moved to the other coast a generation ago. We're having a really great reunion. Even though my move to the refrigerator might be a little abrupt, it would be a notch less shocking for us to assume that as kin, you want me to feel at home in your home. How people feel inside your home depends on the degree to which they belong, right? So do a little inventory in your head. Think about the people you see every day and every week. I'm not talking about people you can text, get on a phone, or a plane to visit. I'm talking about the faces you see every day, the mugs you look at throughout your life work week. You have a spouse, you have kids, you have co-workers, office mates, neighbors, whatever, 30, 35 people who you see with regularity. How many of them have refrigerator rights in your house? How many of them, when you go to visit them, do you wait to politely be invited to have something, or do you just go into their refrigerator? How many of these people give you refrigerator rights? How many of these people can go into your medicine cabinet without your permission? See you in your bathrobe, see you without makeup or unshaven. Hear you talk the way your kids hear you talk. That's the loss of the profile of the American lifestyle that we have failed to appreciate its consequence. We don't have enough relationships to sustain the amazing capacity and talent that you have. Because the way we cope with stress is principally relationally. It's knowing that we are supported. It's a standard practice of teaching in management schools. The notion of team, they'll use the team, the term family, whether it's athletics or whatever, that cliche, there's no I in team, muting or subsiding the sense of self, to lose yourself within the organization, within the others. That's what your family has you do. America and pop psychology, once again, has given this indication that the human being can be a complete, total package. Sorry to break this, but no, we can't. I have gifts. There's gifts I have. I can speak, I can teach. Talk to my wife and kids, and they'll be happy to put on a whiteboard the gifts that I lack. Right? And that describes you. But when your gifts and your gifts and your gifts combine with my gifts in the collective, in the good collective, are all of the gifts. That's what you're doing in your office. That's what you're doing in your business. Everyone working together. Refrigerator rights relationships. It's not lost on any of us who analyze with worry the state of the union, that we have experienced a 6-decade slow leak of institutional stability. We no longer have the institutions and the organizations upon which we rely, whether it's government or politics or the church or business or whatever it is. And we are left to our individuality. It's not enough. So my call to you, those of you with this internal locus of control, is to take seriously the initiative to make sure that you appreciate, have, and build these extended relationships, however you can do it. That's what these meetings are about. And the struggle for attendance in these kinds of meetings and in these organizations is symptomatic of the fact that we have come to the place where we have been in this delusion that we can do it on our own. Let me give you an example. I've been a shrink for a long time. And of course, couples come to me for marital therapy. You can imagine, by the time a couple comes for marital therapy to a therapist, they're not there for a tune-up. They're ready to kill each other. And they always come in with their arms folded, and it's like a last gasp concession. All right, we'll go to a counselor. Well, when they come in and start talking to me, I always start the same way. I ask them how it started, and inevitably, they always say, well, yeah, of course it was great when we started. I mean, we fell in love. It was wonderful. I was certain I was doing the right thing. No one ever once in all these years come in and said, nah, it sucked right out of the gate. No way. They were certain it was the right thing, and then after 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, they said, well, I didn't realize I had inadvertently married Satan. I didn't know that. Sometimes they had, but overwhelmingly you had two good people who came to the place where they drove each other bats. Guess what else they told me? Guess what their lifestyle was? They were usually geographically detached from their family, moved away. And although they had a busy social world, the women didn't have other women who felt like sisters. The men didn't have other men who felt like brothers. Sometimes the men tried to find a sister. The women tried to find a brother. But they didn't have the kind of spread out support. Psychology 101. One person can't handle the whole emotional load of you. And you have no business presuming that you can be the emotional sustenance for an other person. Marriages that stay together oftentimes do so because they get distracted with the busyness of children and work and other things. Listen to this study, 1943, large study on the East Coast. 80% of married couples grew up within 20 blocks of each other. Think about that. 80%. That means if my daughter met your son, even if the families didn't know each other, we knew of the family. Oh yeah, it's a good family. Oh yeah, I know their Aunt Lucy's in jail and Uncle Fred's an idiot, and they know that Uncle Mike on my side's psycho and whatever, but good family. And they got married and they stayed right there. Those marriages lasted a very long time because they had, again, what resilience literature is showing us. I'm all for self-reliance, independence, locus of control, going for it. That's what these meetings do. Help equip you to do what you need to do to take charge, get tips, get skills. But please, if my presentation helps in any way, it's to say, not instead of that, but in addition to that, it's critically important that you pay attention to the nature of the social world within which you live. Do you have those refrigerator rights relationships? And tellingly, when we include more people in our life, it is a native inclination to go for peers. Peers who are interpersonally compatible. It's another myth, another lure of popular psychology, that you have to like the person who is in your world. Aren't you related to people who you'd have to say, my God, if I wasn't related to you, I'd have nothing to do with you? Faces are coming into your mind right now. But you learn to cope because you can't escape. You can't escape your family. Now listen, I'm not naive. I know some people sitting here are going, yeah, I don't live anywhere near my family. Thank God. But whether you ran for your life out of a toxic family or were fired like a rocket out of a great family, the question is, whenever you land and wherever you land, what did you do to rebuild those relationships? What did you do to reconnect? Some people are doing it through church, through social organizations. But the bottom line is the illusion that we can look deeply into each other's eyes and bond. Let's bond. Shall we bond? Get out of here with your bond. I didn't spend 5 minutes bonding with my brothers. But the shoulder-to-shoulder compatibility, if you went to college, you were in the Army. By the way, just a little side note, in 1971, they had the draft lottery. Some of you may be of that age. I was number one. I won the lottery. I went into the Army, and the bonding that I had with those guys with whom I had almost nothing in common, no background, no history, and yet we got connected. You got connected through college. You get connected through these events over time. Those are the relationships that are the glue for the health of us individually and personally, and fundamentally for us as a culture. And that's what we've lost by our drifting away, and that's the nut of media. Because media creates an obstacle for reforming those relationships. We've been doing some new studies at Purdue University because, for example, you send your child off to a college, for example, whether it's, Texas or Arizona State or Purdue or Indiana, whatever. And in fact, when they're there, we are curious to see if they're investing their time getting connected the way we used to get connected intensely, or if they're spending so much time with Facebook and Twitter and texting to stay connected to past relationships, are they failing to kind of cohere and adhere? The next book, Glenn Sparks and I are writing after Refrigerator writes, the next one coming out is called Graduation Jolt, one of the highest spikes of depression. And think about this for hiring new young workers. One of the highest spikes of depression and anxiety, chronic stress in the culture, are kids right out of college, that 22 to 25, or out of the military, 22 to 25, 26 years old. Think about it. You go from one intense system of social structure, the childhood family, elementary school, the soap opera that is high school, and then even in college or the Army, has an institutional structured facilitation that gets you connected to other people. When you get out of those institutions, there's nothing to receive you structurally to facilitate getting connected. You're totally on your own, and most people, too many people, adults and young people, are clueless about the need to take strong initiative. How long does it take us to get close? Let's suppose we move next door to each other, okay? You and your family and my family and me. And we live next door to each other in a great neighborhood. How many years would it take? How many occasions would it take? How many backyard barbecues? Going to a graduation, going to your dad's funeral, going to a wedding, whatever. How long does it take to get that closeness? How long would it take to get that close to your brothers and your sisters, your cousins, your college chums, your co-workers, your office mates? It's a blind spot in American life that we are marginalizing and pushing away. And gee, we lead the world in chronic stress. No matter how smart we are, because it's not from the neck up, my friends, no matter how smart we are, we can't seem to overcome this corrosive notion. Let me close by talking about this Robert Sapolsky. Robert Sapolsky from Stanford is a legendary neuropsychologist. Anyone in psychology knows this fellow. And he was the one who, about 30 plus years ago, really established the physiological consequence of stress, chronic stress. In other words, what's going on in your bloodstream, the cortisol that clogs your arteries and gives you heart attacks and everything else. And you know how he did it? He studied baboons. He took his students to Kenya to study a community of baboons. Imagine if your child called them and says, hey, I'm at Stanford, it's really good. I'm going with a professor to Kenya. To do what? To study baboons. Oh, good. And what he did was he started taking blood samples from the baboon community. Think about that. You ever see baboons? As soon as you see them, you want to say, I really wish they wore slacks. He used a blowgun to knock them out and take a blood sample. And he discovered, famously, that in this alpha male structure, where the alpha males were rigid and overwhelming and powerful, the alpha males had the lowest stress, lowest cortisol. Those that were dominated down the food chain were the most chronically stressed, had the most health problems. Well, kind of makes sense. It's intuitive, right? If you feel that you don't have power and you don't have control and you're dominated, it's a lesson in management schools about how to have leadership without that alpha, corrosive alpha stuff that keeps your people healthy. The whole wellness movement now is afoot because of that. How to create a sense of well-being even if you are down the food chain in terms of authority. How does authority act? Interesting thing happened about 10 years into this experiment. They went one year and there was a disaster in this community they had been studying for a decade of 100 baboons. It turns out that they had come upon an abandoned human camp with rotting food.
And so the baboons ate the rotting food, and a significant number died. Guess which ones ate the food and died? The alphas. So now you had this anomalous community where these baboons had very few alphas. The community got healthier. The cortisol level dropped. As a matter of fact, when wandering alpha baboons tried to join the community, they were pushed back out. No, it's working really great now. A Whitehall study in London famously replicated this with human beings. In the civil service community in London, and they looked at the alphas, men and women, who had the highest authority, and sure enough, the people with the highest authority had the lowest stress, and the workers underneath had the highest stress. The tale is that the people who feel dominated and without power are people who are vulnerable to the corrosive effects of stress. So what ameliorates that? Your community. Your brothers, your sisters, your spouse, your kids, sure, your aunts, your uncles, the multi-generational, the way we were designed to flourish. It's still healthy in many other cultures. But here in the US, we've stepped away. It's refrigerator rights relationships. You got them? You got to get them. God bless you. Hope it was helpful. Thanks.